Welcome to the Empowering ELLs podcast, where we help teachers support their ELLs. Please welcome your host, Katie.
So I've learned a lot throughout the years of teaching, and since I've been working in dual language recently, I've had some misconceptions about the way ELL students learn, and I thought I would share some of those with you today because, well, you might have those same misconceptions or you might relate, and you might not even realize some of these things are misconceptions. So the first one, I'm just going to get straight to it, guys. The first one is that ELL students' learning should be the same time as everyone else's learning. So, in curriculums and pacing guides, oftentimes they do have ways to differentiate for your ELL students, which is great. But the pacing is the exact same as the monolingual students. And it just takes so much more to learn a language and process it and then be able to extend it into your knowledge of the subject than it does if you speak that language. So for some people, it's already really difficult for some people to learn math, right? Especially some parents that are like, this is not the way I learn math. Well, imagine that not only are they learning this skill for the first time, but these are the first time they're hearing this language, these vocabulary words. It takes a couple more minutes to process every single word just because they're not necessarily words that you're familiar with or can put into context somewhere else. And you're expected to do that at the same time as someone who knows that language and is familiar with it. That's just not fair. So that was one of my major misconceptions, was that it should take my ELL students the same amount of time to complete something as long as I'm giving them certain other differentiation, such as allowing them to use Google Translate or discuss in their language, which is bringing me right on to point number 2, because this is a biggie to me and one that I'm not really fond of. So another misconception is that if you're teaching English or if you're teaching Spanish, whatever the second language is, a misconception is that students need to be speaking the target language at all times. And that is not fair to students. If students can process this information and discuss it, and then the outcome is in the target language, to me that's perfectly fine, you guys. I am a firm believer in Spanglish, and I believe that Spanglish is allowing the students to combine their languages and connect their languages to communicate, which to me is even better than just one language, because we know some words don't translate the same, so they might be able to find a better word in their other language. But I digress. That's a little beside the point. My main point is that students need to have an opportunity to use their language that they are comfortable with in the classroom. I understand giving the language or giving the content in the target language and wanting the student's final outcome to be in the target language. But when they're working independently, are you trying to make it so that they are more knowledgeable about the content or about the language? And my guess is most of you would say the content area of what you're teaching. I mean, I could be wrong, but my guess is that most of you would say the content of what you're teaching. So if you're teaching science, let's say, and you're trying to teach about, I don't know, dinosaurs. I don't even know if they teach about dinosaurs anymore in science. I'm not a science teacher. But if they teach about dinosaurs in science, and you're working with your ELL students, and they have to go, let's say, research when these dinosaurs existed and create a timeline of categories of when the dinosaurs existed in the different eras. I can't remember what they're all called, but I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Like when T-Rexes lived as opposed to some other dinosaurs. Is it really necessary that they do all of that in English, or can they be discussing with their partner in Spanish or whatever language they speak? And then when they come back to you, since they know this information, they can use a sentence frame and put it into the target language. And then they'll at least be knowledgeable about it and feel a little more confident because they actually understood what they researched. They are getting that English vocabulary in from when they do the output information by using that sentence frame. But to me, I don't know, I just think Spanglish really is good and beneficial for our learners, but they also should be able to learn the content in the way that's best for them. Now, the third misconception is just a little bit about data accurately reflecting what they've learned. And I guess this one kind of depends on how you use data and grades in your classroom. But if you are assessing ELL students in anything other than their preferred language, is it really reliable to use that as data of those students mastering the content? And that's a biggie for me. I know, we have standardized tests and all that now. So that's not on the teachers or anything, but why can't we do the most that we can within the classroom? Why can we not do the best that we can within our classroom to best reflect what these students can achieve? Because they are able to accomplish so much if we dive into those right skills and allow them to discuss in other languages other than the target language. And I think a lot of this comes with fear and kind of just doing what we're familiar with, because this is what a lot of teachers do, and it is difficult to break out of the mold. But I'm trying to... Where am I going? Where am I going with this? Okay, so students should be assessed on what they know or what they don't know. If you are giving them an assessment in another language that is not their preferred language, then the assessment is also assessing their language skills, which is necessary from time to time. I'm not trying to say to you that we don't do those assessments, but are we assessing the language skills or the content? Again, and I know they both are important and they both do come with time, but right now this is just, my 2 cents. Alright, well, thank you guys so much for listening. Join the Facebook group if you have not already, Empowering ELLs/Dual Language, and you can submit ideas or topics or questions in there, and the most interesting will be discussed on the podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Empowering ELLs podcast. Make sure you tune in next time and search us on Facebook for more. Until next time.